since the steel plant is one of the largest employers still, but they're cutting back. They need less and less people, and it's a multinational corporation, which I'm sure makes Petco happy, right? So as long as the people who profit are from Russia and we're exporting all these goods and we're not helping our... The Colorado National Guard went ahead and went from the Trinidad to Walsenburg line. So 14, it happened, the Ludlow Massacre happened on the 20th, April 20th, 1914. And it was between the United Mine Workers of America against the coal mining companies of Colorado, the Rockefeller family-owned Colorado Fuel and Iron Company, the Rocky Mountain Fuel Company, and the Victor American Fuel Company. Right now, I-25 connects Trinidad and Walsenburg, but for those 40 miles between Walsenburg, where they got the guns, and Trinidad, where they had the potatoes, and they sold it to Walsenburg, got the guns, and then came back and fought. No. Ludlow Massacre. So they dug these deep holes so the kids could get into the holes and then they would be safe. But because the kids had got into the holes, because they were afraid that they were just going to spray and just shoot the tent city up again, but because they were already in the holes, that made them sitting ducks. And so 13 kids, or 11 kids and two women. The Colorado National Guard was stationed along that 40 miles, and there was a lot of skirmishes between them. A lot to take in, but essentially I think it was a overwhelming success for the establishment and the good old boys. Dennis Flores won. He put $10,000 into the campaign, so he put billboards and he spent advertisements. He spent some money, and he was the top of the ticket, and he ran on his name. So he didn't have any platforms, but that's, you know, to look at the Flores and Aleph race, this could be a precursor to a runoff election later on for a chief executive. Now, I was looking at the ballot issue number 300. It lost by about 500 votes. So 500 votes, right? That's close. That's close. 11.7 voted for it, and then 12.1 thousand voted against it. So 500 votes, right? Only a difference of 500 votes. And I'm looking at Charlotte Perez, and Charlotte Perez, she had 3,585 votes. 3,585 votes. So because the author of 300 was being petty and is filled with hatred and can't forgive Charlotte for whatever reason, I mean, she could have used all those votes, all those people. If she could have got any of those folks to support 300 to put it in the mouths when they all were in favor of this mayor thing, they essentially endorsed it. They essentially let this thing go on through. So 300 lost by 500 votes. Charlotte Perez got 3,500 votes. The author of 300 ran against Charlotte. She ran against Charlotte Perez. That was the only one she was critical of out of 7 people. And she actually got the second, you know, from the bottom. So, but still, 3,500 votes would have put 300 over the top, and then 300 would have won. Been smart. Had she been strategic, she could have used all those votes of all the different candidates. And so instead of, essentially, the author of 300 did the same thing that the Pueblo chieftain did. They picked their favorite candidates and then told everybody else the rest were stupid and that they were no good. So they're essentially trying to corral people, but people don't like to be corralled. Just say, here are the strengths, here are the weaknesses, you decide. So with 300, I was worried about it turning into a Rosewood, but with that shooting, I think it might already be a Rosewood. But Charlotte was for 2B, and had she, you know, championed 300, which she was on the fence. She said she liked the idea, she liked the spirit of it. But then she walked away from it. It was easy for her to oppose it because the author, you know, was going to turn the cops against her. And what's the point of that? Evraz is the steel plant now. So before, the steel plant here in Pueblo was the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company, CFI. So the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company which history knows that as the steel plant that killed all those people in Ludlow. So they killed 13 children, they killed 25 people in the Ludlow massacre, and then there was a Cold War for 10 days afterwards, which wound up killing 50 to 60 people. And that happened right in Los Animas County in Ludlow, which Ludlow is a ghost town today. Nobody lives in Ludlow today because of the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company. J.D. Rockefeller, Jay Gould, J.D. Rockefeller, these corporatists, they hated the working class people, so they just sprayed them in their tent cities, just started shooting. Company, Colorado Fuel and Iron Company, was acquired by Oregon Steel Mills in 1993. It changed its name to Rocky Mountain Steel Mills. In January 2007, along with the rest of Oregon Steel's holdings, it was acquired by the Evraz Group, a Russian steel corporation, for $2.3 billion. So for the last 10 years, the big steel plant, we're the steel city. So we're the steel city because of Colorado Fuel and Iron, because of that old company, because of the Oregon Steel Mills, the Rocky Mountain Steel Mills. Evraz, owned by a Russian steel corporation, $2.3 billion for the last 10 years. Have they donated to anybody's campaign? Have they give jobs? Yeah, talk about Russian collusion. Pueblo has been colluding with the Russians for a decade now. Evraz PLC is a multinational vertically integrated steel making and mining company headquartered in London, United Kingdom. It has operations mainly in Russia, but also in Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Italy, Czech Republic, the U.S., Canada, and South Africa. The company was founded as a small metal trading business in 1992. On June 5, 2005, Evraz Group floated some 8.3% of its shares in the form of GDR. In London, the company was priced at 14.5 per GDR, implying an equity value of $5.15 billion. An additional 6% was the stake was placed in January 2006, resulting in a total free float of 14.3%. The revenue that it made in 2016 is $7.5 billion, so they bought it out for $2.3 billion, but they're making $7.5 billion. Vertically integrated holding with high self-sufficiency in iron ore and excess coking coal production. Enables the company to be one of the largest participants in the domestic coking coal market through its affiliates. Evraz also controls some metal trading and logistics assets. The business structure is as follows. They got the steel, the ore, the coal, the vanadium, sales and logistics, and then there's the corporate structure. So yeah, basically Canada or Russia owns Pueblo, since the steel plant is one of the largest employers still, but they're cutting back. They need less and less people, and it's a multinational corporation, which I'm sure makes Pedco happy, right? So as long as the people who profit are from Russia and we're exporting all these goods and we're not helping our Woody Guthrie, he had written this song called The Ludlow Massacre, and it's pretty haunting. Essentially, they were afraid that the Colorado Iron Steel, the Evraz of yesterday, that they were going to kill all their family. They were going to shoot up their tents and shit. They already shot into the tents, and just that's how psychotic they were. So Rockefeller, Jay Gould, the bankers, the 1%, they didn't give a shit about the working class people. And in fact, the people that was working at the Ludlow, the steel plant, the whatever it was, the mines, at the time were scabs. They were scabs that came in from out of town. So they were Italians, and there were some other immigrants that came in here, Serbians, Italians, I'll say maybe Irish, I don't know. But the Colorado Coalfield War happened right after the Ludlow Massacre, which eventually killed 60. It was about 18 miles northwest of Trinidad. So Trinidad is a home rule city, which is in Los Animas County, Los Animas, the Lost Souls County. So Trinidad and the Walsenburg. So Trinidad, the women of Trinidad went ahead and took a whole bunch of potatoes, and they put potatoes in a wagon, and they wagoned their potatoes up to Walsenburg and bought a bunch of guns, and then they brought all those guns back, and then they handed all the working people guns, and then it was on like Donkey Kong. They were going around from mine to mine, essentially kicking all the mine owners out of the mines. Now we're taking this shit back. And they did it by bullying. They did it with, and so they killed all those innocent people at Ludlow. So I'm glad there was some, progressive revolutionary reactionaries. A while ago, the population of Trinidad is 9,000, and it is Los Animas County, one of the largest counties of Colorado. Colorado has 64 counties, Los Animas being one of those counties. The Colorado Coalfield War was a major labor uprising in Colorado between 1913 and 1914. It happened, the Ludlow Massacre happened on the 20th, April 20th, 1914. And it was between the United Mine Workers of America against the coal mining companies of Colorado, the Rockefeller family-owned Colorado Fuel and Iron Company, the Rocky Mountain Fuel Company, and the Victor American Fuel Company. So Rockefeller family-owned Colorado Fuel and Iron. The steel plant has a horrible historical legacy. They only gave a shit about getting those raw materials, selling it to industrialists, the working class people, and their kids, 13 of them in the ground. They're already in a 1,200 striking coal miners and their families. And if you listen to Woody Guthrie's Ludlow Massacre song, you hear how they were afraid that these gun thugs of the corporate company Evraz, actually I saw some, they were driving like cop-looking like vehicles, so private security firms, right? They got their own police force there. So the Evraz, no, Ludlow Massacre. So they dug these deep holes so the kids could get into the holes and then they would be safe. But because the kids had got into the holes, because they were afraid that they were just going to spray and just shoot the tent city up again, but because they were already in the holes, that made them sitting ducks. And so 13 kids, or 11 kids and two women. And then 24 people total. And then 60 people over a 10-day span. So then a week, it was civil. The Colorado National Guard went ahead and went from the Trinidad to Walsenburg line. So right now, I-25 connects Trinidad and Walsenburg. But for those 40 miles between Walsenburg, where they got the guns, and Trinidad, where they had the potatoes, and they sold it to Walsenburg, got the guns, and then came back and fought, the Colorado National Guard was stationed along that 40 miles, and there was a lot of skirmishes between them. And then it said the entire strike would be between 70 to 200 lives. And then Thomas G. Andrews described it as the deadliest strike in the history of the United States. And it's commonly referred to as the Colorado Coalfield War. So it was a week-long war, and it ended when Woodrow Wilson came and just started arresting everybody, the National Guard and the strikers. So he just sent in his militia. Who did he send? Couldn't be the National Guard. That was to the Ludlow Massacre. The leaders of organized labor in Colorado issued a call to arms urging union members to acquire all the arms and ammunition legally available in a large-scale guerrilla war. The Colorado Coalfield War ensued for 10 days. In Trinidad, Colorado, United Mine Workers of America officials openly distributed arms and ammunition to strikers at Union headquarters. 700 to 1,000 strikers attacked mine after mine, driving off or killing the guards and setting fire to the buildings. At least 50 people, including those at Ludlow, were killed in 10 days of fighting against mine guards, and hundreds of militia reinforcements rushed back into the strike zone. The fighting ended only when Woodrow Wilson sent in the federal troops. The troops reported back to Washington, D.C. They disarmed both sides, displacing and often arresting the militia in the process. They're claiming 75 people died here. The strike was called off. I'll try to do my best. Josh Bruns, what is your view on the city's relationship with Black Hills Energy? Josh Bruns responds, rather than increase rates for solar customers and LED street lighting, as Black Hill proposes, we should reward the self-sufficiency that incrementally decreases dependency on a distant and increasingly expensive energy source. Peak oil is upon us, so prices will inevitably increase. Long-term jobs it creates are distant and hardly benefit Pueblo's economy. Namaste Solar is a Colorado-based worker-owned business that could gain a foothold in Pueblo by hiring... A second to get into it. His own voice. That could gain a foothold in Pueblo by hiring and training local residents. Government contracts can act as incentive for an increase in worker ownership. State law mandates requirements of an increase in renewable resources. The council has adopted the Paris Accords, and it is only increased economic security that will result from increasing economic sustainability. Arcadia Power is a company that accepts payments on Black Hill's behalf and then requires the energy consumed to be sourced from renewable energies. There is no cost other than your regular monthly bill. I believe the city can reduce rates once customers have switched to Arcadia Power, and switching services only takes a few minutes. Josh, I was reading in this newspaper, this Republican rag. This is Monday, November 6, 2017. And I saw some arrests here. There wasn't really nothing I gave a damn about. This is Monday's paper. They had a bunch of letters to the editor on Sunday. Monday, they got nothing but bullshit.
Carmen, just 1050. Stop the car! Stop the car! Turn it off! Turn the car off now! Turn it off! Shots fired! Shots fired! Shots fired! Tom, shots fired! Tom, you had the vehicle hit me. Turn it off now! Turn it off! Turn it off! Turn it off! Shots fired! Shots fired! Shots fired! Calm, shots fired! Tom, you had the vehicle hit me.